Hey everyone, welcome to HandsOn IT. If you are new to Linux, this video will explain Linux architecture in simple terms. Whether you are a beginner or just need a refresher, we will cover the core components of Linux and how it works under the hood. By the end, you will understand why Linux is used for everything from small websites to big corporate servers. What is Linux? Let's start with the basics. Linux is an operating system. It's free alternate to Windows or Mac OS and is based on the Unix operating system. It's used in servers, desktops, mobile phones and embedded systems. You will find Linux running in data centers, cloud services, smartphones and even refrigerators. Linux is popular because it's secure, customizable and lightweight. But how does it actually work? The kernel. The kernel is heart of Linux. It's the core part that manages hardware resources like CPU, memory, and storage. When you run any application, the kernel makes sure your hardware works perfectly with your software. The kernel makes sure your hardware works properly with your software. Linux is based on a monolithic kernel, which means it handles everything from file management to process scheduling all in one place. This makes Linux super efficient and fast. And the shell. Next we have the shell. The shell is the interface you use to communicate with the kernel. It's the command line interface where you type commands to interact with your Linux system. In Linux, you can use bash or other shells. Bash is the more popular one, but the idea is the same. You enter a command and the shell passes to its kernel to be executed. The shell is like a translator, making sure the kernel knows exactly what you want to do. Without it, Linux wouldn't be nearly as usable. The Linux file system. Now let's talk about the file system. In Linux, everything is treated as a file, even devices, processes, and sockets. The Linux file system starts with a root directory, and everything branches out from there. The structure is tree-like. Under this root, we have directories like /home, /var, /bin, etc. /home, where users' files are stored, and /bin, essential system binaries stored here, which are like commands. /etc, configuration files stores here, and /var, variable files which are logs and data will store here. This structure allows Linux to be extremely organized and efficient. Unlike Windows, there is no C drive or D drive. Everything lives within one unified structure. User space. In addition to kernel, we have something called user space. This is where all the applications and user processes run. In Linux, you typically have users and groups. Each user has their own home directory where they store files. The root user is the super user, which means they can access and modify everything. Linux gives you fine-grained control over user access. This is one of the reasons Linux is so secure. Only authorized users can modify certain files and directories, init system and services. Let's dive into how Linux handles system services and background tasks. The init system, such as systemd, controls the startup of the services when the system boots up. Services are things like the web server, database server, or network services. The init system makes sure these services start and stop when needed. The systemd system manages everything behind the scenes. So when you start your machine, services like Apache, MySQL and SSH automatically start. Communication between components. Finally, let's touch on how these components talk to each other. The kernel, shell, user space, and services all communicate via system calls and inter-process communication (IPC). For example, when you run a command in the terminal, the shell sends that request to the kernel. The kernel processes the command and returns the result to the shell, which displays it on your screen. Linux architecture recap. Kernel manages your hardware. The shell lets you interact. with the system. The file system keeps everything organized, and the init system start and stop services. Together, these parts create a powerful, efficient, and secure operating system. I hope this simple explanation of Linux architecture helps you understand how Linux works. In future videos, we will dive deeper into each of these components. If you found this video useful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more Linux tutorials and real world IT skills.